Hello, today we are going to discuss the books that I read in January and February of 2022. The first book that I read this year was The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley. My sister got me this book for Christmas, and it was perfect timing because I have been in a reading slump, and thrillers are usually one of the easiest genres for me to read when I am in a reading slump, and so this was perfect. This is kind of a locked door whodunit kind of mystery. It is set in the Scottish Highlands, I believe, and a group of friends go there for New Year's celebration, and, mystery unfolds. I did really enjoy this. Most of the characters are wildly unlikable, but they are very engrossing and interesting and well developed. After this, I did immediately read her other thriller, The Guest List, and this is a very similar book plot-wise. In this, a wedding is taking place on an Irish island, I think, and similarly very complicated and well discussed characters. The Guest List does deal with some slightly more deep topics, I guess. They both would probably have content warnings, so if that is something that you're worried about, I would look up those for each book. But I would say that there was a little bit more of substance in The Guest List. But if you like thrillers, if you like really character-driven mysteries, I would recommend both or either of these. They were very enjoyable to read, and I had zero problem staying fully invested and reading through them very quickly while in a reading slump, so that should tell you something. Another book that I listened to all in one day because I was so engrossed was Tender as the Flesh. I did talk about this in another video, but this is a story where you are dropped into a world where people have been told that they are no longer able to eat meat from animals, and so they have converted into factory farming humans. And I found this book just absolutely riveting and so well done. I don't want to spoil too much of the book, but this book has so much to say about exploitation of humans and animals. There are so many parallels to our world now, both for humans and animals. There's like a very obvious layer to this book, which is factory farming and animal rights and that sort of thing. Then there's other layers that you could just keep peeling back and drawing parallels and uncovering truths about so many practices in our society around the world. This is kind of a gruesome book, but it is also very emotionally distant. Like, the wording is very intentionally very clinical, because that's part of the point of the book. Some reviewers seem to disagree with me on this, but in my opinion, it doesn't seem like she's trying to really exploit you as a reader, almost, if that makes sense. Like, I don't like it when authors are really trying to go for emotional shock value. I think that is exploitative, and I didn't feel like that was happening in this book. Your experience may vary, but I will be thinking about this book forever, and I probably will reread it, actually. Next up, I read A Slow Fire Burning by Paula Hawkins. This is another thriller. Paula Hawkins is the author of The Girl on the Train, if you're familiar with that one, and then she had one between these two, like Into the Water or something. I have read all of her books. I think she's a pretty good author. The Girl on the Train was definitely her best book, in my opinion, so far. A Slow Fire Burning did keep me totally interested, and I thought that the characters were really well done, but it is not memorable at all. It is one of those thrillers that I read, thought was good, not gonna remember it. I barely remember the plot even now, only like a month later. So if you like thrillers, I do recommend it, but it was nothing to write home about. Next, I finished James y el Melocotón Gigante, James and the Giant Peach in Spanish. This was a gift that was given to me, and I obviously really appreciate it, and it was a good learning experience for Spanish. This is the first Roald Dahl that I have read, actually, and I do not support Roald Dahl. In case you're unfamiliar, he was a very open anti-Semite and lots of other problematic opinions, and I do think that they come through quite prominently in his books. I remember seeing an article about the anti-Semitism and disabled people in The Witches that I will link if I can find it again. But yeah, I think in this book, his anti-fatness was so prevalent, like very aggressive. Similarly, the evil female characters are ugly, of course. People could say that you're being too sensitive or whatever, but I think it's important to not give all those subtle messages to kids. And so, although this was wildly creative book, and I'm sure very funny, I don't think I'm quite advanced enough in Spanish to have picked up on all of the humor, but I did have moments that I thought were quite funny, even in Spanish. But overall, not a book I would specifically recommend, because I do think that the problematic material really just does come through very strongly in his works, unfortunately. Speaking of problematic things, next I read The Storm is Upon Us by Mike Rothschild, and this is a book about QAnon, how QAnon started, how people get sucked into it, and kind of what you can do as someone not in it. Unfortunately, I do have immediate family members who are into QAnon or other conspiracy theories and communities, and I have just been at a total loss of what to do for years now, to be totally frank. I wrote on my Instagram, I honestly feel like such a hypocrite sometimes, speaking on the internet about things when I have people in my immediate family who it seems like I should be, fixing somehow, but I can't do that. I have tried and it doesn't work. And that is the conclusion of the book as well, is you can't get someone out of something like this. They have to want out on their own, and you can try everything, as I have done already, until you're blue in the face, and you're only going to be wasting your energy and pushing them further and further into this. So this was, not a fun read, because the whole origin story of QAnon is just even more ridiculous and just frankly ludicrous than I even had realized, really. It's infuriating to see how people have gotten caught up into this and used it to justify a lot of the terrible things that they want to believe already. If you are curious about QAnon or origins of cults and how people get drawn into cults, it was an interesting book. Yeah, I can't say I enjoyed the experience of reading it, but I do think it was, I guess, moderately helpful at least. Next, I read Solutions and Other Problems by Ali Brosh. If you are familiar with the blog Hyperbole and a Half from back in the day, that is this author. She wrote a book also called Hyperbole and a Half, and this is her second book called Solutions and Other Problems. I have been a fan of Hyperbole and a Half from basically the start. I think she is just hilarious. I also read the first book when it came out, and it was great. This one is also so funny, so touching. A fair warning, this is sad also. This is very funny, but it is very sad also. There is a content warning for suicide and other very serious mental health issues, and she just hits you with them. There will be a chapter that is just so funny, and then a chapter that is just heartbreaking. So, fair warning, it was a little bit touch and go reading this during a kind of down month. Sometimes I had to start the chapter, see where we were going, and then if it was a funny chapter, I could continue, and if not, I had to put it down for a later date. But she remains the funniest author, comic. It is comics, if you weren't aware. She remains the funniest that I have ever read, and yeah, I recommend wholeheartedly both of her books. Do it if this isn't a concern. The last book that I read in February, and I did read it all on February 28th, is People Like Them by Samira Sedira. This was a random library pick, and it's very small, very petite, and I did read this all in one evening. This is a kind of thriller translated from French about a family who lives in a remote, like an alpine village. Another family moves down the street or across the street from them, and they are very wealthy, very kind of glamorous, carefree, and the husband of that family is Black. And they kind of become friends, and then drama and problems and tragedy ensues. I did really enjoy this, and I think it was very thought-provoking. If you do read it, definitely read the author's note at the end, because she does talk about why she was inspired to write this book and kind of what some of her underlying ideas were. I did think that they were fairly apparent in the story as well, but I thought that the author's note really added a lot of context, and if there were things that you didn't pick up on, might shed light on that. I would definitely read anything else by her. I think that this is the first book that she's written that has been translated into English, but she does have others as well, so hopefully some of those will be as well. So that is everything for the months of January and February. I am hopeful that I have come out of my reading slump, hoping for the best. If not, maybe I'll see you again in a couple months.